New Thinking Aloud is a non-profit endeavor. Your contributions to the New Thinking Aloud Foundation make a meaningful difference in our ability to produce new videos. You can now download a free PDF copy or purchase a beautiful printed edition of Issue 5 of the New Thinking Aloud magazine.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we'll be exploring yoga from a somatic perspective. With me is Dr. Eleanor Criswell, Professor of Psychology at Sonoma State University in California. Dr. Criswell is a past president of the Association for Humanistic Psychology. She's a founding director of the Saybrook Institute in San Francisco. She is the director of the Novato Institute for Somatic Research and Training, and she is the editor of Somatics, a magazine journal of the bodily arts and sciences. She is the author of How Yoga Works, an Introduction to Somatic Yoga. Welcome, Eleanor.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yoga is something that everybody has heard about, and most people associate it with unusual postures, but actually the word yoga means much more than that, doesn't it?
It does. It really comes from the Sanskrit word which referred to yoke or union, and it refers to our reconnecting our sense of union. We haven't really separated, but we experience ourselves as separate. So these are practices designed to help you re-establish your sense of connectedness.
Well, union, though, could mean many different things, can't it?
Yeah. So it's a union of mind and body, a reunification of you with others, with the environment, with the all of existence, or whatever you'd like to call it, with the divine. Yeah.
And the somatic perspective that you bring to yoga is somewhat unique, isn't it?
Somewhat. It certainly is part of yoga, but I really have emphasized it more and more over the years. And it really is, as you're doing the yoga, being as mind-body integrated as possible throughout all the different things that you are doing, so that it transforms the yoga postures into meditation practices, as well as the breathing and actual meditation practices.
You yourself have been practicing and teaching yoga for about 30 years, haven't you?
About 30 years,
And I'm sure for you, and for people who really do more than just take a yoga class, it's not just exercises or postures, it's a way of life, isn't it?
Definitely a way of life, and it does transform your life. It's an incredible companion and guide and teacher, and certainly it's a health promoter, but it's a wonderful tool to have as a part of every aspect of your life.
Classically speaking, yoga developed out of the Hindu culture. Can you talk a little about that?
Not much, not much, but it is quite ancient, written about in the ancient Indian literature.
The Yoga Sutras?
And then, of course, Patanjali wrote them, transcribed them, but they'd been passing from teacher to student for centuries.
So we don't even know how old yoga is.
Not really.
Yeah.
But over the centuries, from Patanjali's time on, it has spread throughout the world and into different cultures, into our culture, and is more and more a part of many people's lifestyles.
Well, the classic stages of yoga, as described by Patanjali, includes, I believe, in the beginning, the ethical prescriptions, things to do, things not to do. It's as if Patanjali is saying, you know, begin with your attitude.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why they begin with that is that as you do your yoga practice and as you become more integrated, you become more powerful with whatever you do. So it's very important that you do things that are appropriate for others and for the environment and for yourself, because you will be more powerful with them. And so the notion of karma is the return of your acts to yourself, so you especially want to be sure that the things that you put out powerfully, you wish to receive back powerfully.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that your behaviors and attitudes be in balance with
the Hindu
life.
notion of karma is very similar to, I guess, the biblical notion of as you sow, so shall you reap.
Yeah, it's a really useful one too in terms of impacting on your behavior and the way you live your life.
Mm-hmm. And what significance do the asanas or the postures of yoga have?
Well, they are used to train your physiology so that, for one thing, your meditation will be facilitated and certainly not impeded. If you are extremely tight, tense, and in pain, you really cannot meditate as completely or fully. So the postures enable you to develop your, say, physical self, mm-hmm. so that it is more available for all the levels of consciousness and being in the world.
But these postures, I mean, aren't the same as, say, Western calisthenics or, you know,
Right.
the kind of physical culture we have in the West. There's a difference, isn't there?
Quite a difference. So also in somatic yoga, you do the postures even more carefully and more slowly than you might in hatha yoga, other forms of yoga, because the purpose is to remain integrated, mind-body, throughout the posture, both going into the posture, mm-hmm. in the posture, coming out of the posture.
Well, is flexibility the goal of these postures? You see people twisted up into all sorts of positions that most Westerners would find almost impossible to conceive of, let alone do.
True. Now, one thing I would like to say on that, and I would really like to put the word out to as many people as possible who are doing yoga, and that is to be careful that they don't trigger the stretch reflex. If you take a contracted muscle and then stretch it into a posture, you run the risk of triggering the stretch reflex, which will recontract you relatively soon. Mm-hmm. But if you'll go into the posture very slowly and mindfully, so that you are allowing the muscles to lengthen rather than stretching them, mm-hmm. and come out of the posture very slowly, then the end result will be flexibility that lasts for a longer period of time.
And I gather that the somatic approach is to, at each stage of the posture, as you prepare for it, as you move into it, as you achieve the fullness of the posture, and then as you come out of it, to be aware of what's going on inside.
Yes. As much as possible to allow your voluntary motor cortex to be involved in doing the posture, rather than turning it over to other areas of the brain that can do it wonderfully, but will not have the same result.
Mm-hmm. So that when you do these movements and postures consciously, movements that would otherwise be done unconsciously mm-hmm. by the body, if done at all, I suppose mm-hmm. you're really activating new neurological patterns mm-hmm. in the brain.
Definitely. See, the motor cortex actually has the function of inhibiting unwanted movements, allowing you to express the ones that you really want to make. So as you stay aware, then you are doing a lot of use of your motor cortex that you don't ordinarily do. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it a growing process.
Mm-hmm. A whole new way of working with the brain.
Yeah, and then it sort of unfolds into the other ways in which you organize yourself for things that you mm-hmm. do in your life.
Mm-hmm. Now there are a number of stages of yoga practice beyond mm-hmm. the postures, beyond mm-hmm. the asanas. Mm-hmm. The next stage, I suppose, would be pranayama, the yogic breathing.
The breathing practices. And so what you're doing there is you are voluntarily taking over the breathing function for a short period of time. From the somatic perspective, what you're doing often is voluntarily taking charge, taking control. And as you do, then new capacities become possible.
Because breathing is normally controlled by
the medulla.
The medulla.
Right.
Way down there at the brain stem,
right.
Isn't it? A part of the brain that we normally is associated with reptiles.
Our reptilian brain.
Yeah. So that when you take over that function consciously, it must really have an impact on the whole neurological system.
Definitely. In fact, there are some yogis that feel that breathing is the key, the most transformatory part of the whole process. Of course, different ones will find different parts of it the most important part.
Well, I suppose one thing that can be said for breathing is it's something that we do constantly from the moment we're born till the moment we die. And to be able to do that consciously must have a deep, deep impact.
Because you certainly are able to focus your mind more, and you're more sort of empowered with it. Rather than it running you, you are more
Can you say some things about the word pranayama, which is the word for these breathing exercises?
Well, the yogis believe that everything has its prana content. So that prana being the universal energy out of which all of matter evolved and to which it will return, various things in our environment have more prana than other things. I think nowadays that we can think of the quality of the environment as being reflected in some objects more than others, such as a nature scene might have more. I think of an analogy being negative ions, and that certain environments have more negative ions.
Which are supposed to be healthy for you.
Right, healthy.
Negative ions are positive. So it's the word prana means breath, and it also means like this life energy.
Special breath, taking special breath in. So it's a practice in regulating your breathing to enhance life function and consciousness.
And do you find that as you do these breathing exercises that your consciousness changes?
Definitely. You can feel, as you do them, a feeling of revitalization. You can sometimes feel more relaxed than you did before. Your mind may feel clearer. Your mood may feel pleasantly more positive. And
could you demonstrate some pranayama exercise for us, Eleanor?
All right, I will demonstrate alternate nostril breathing. And there are a number of breathing patterns that have been used throughout history and throughout the world, and this is just one of them. And as you're doing it, you are sort of balancing the right side with the left side, and also you are focusing your attention, you are inhaling, you are doing some breath holding, which is part of breathing practices, and the whole thing is a practice in being more attentive. So anyway, what you're doing is you're going to be breathing in through one nostril, holding your breath, and then exhaling through the other one. And with breathing practices, they often encourage you to add to them over time. So you'll do, in fact, sometimes they'll recommend that you do them 3 times a day. I find that it's important to balance out what you are doing with your lifestyle, so that too much breathing practice may put you in a state of consciousness that may not be appropriate for your calling, your life's calling. And so anyway, with this we're going to do a breathing ratio, which is inhaling for 1 count, holding your breath for 4, and exhaling for 2. We in Somatic Yoga use the Om count as a way of measuring the time. And so you would tuck your index finger and your second finger in the palm of your hand. You would close your left nostril, you would inhale for 1 count, hold your breath for 4, and exhale for 2, and inhale for 1, hold your breath for 4, and exhale for 2, and in. And so forth, back and forth, ending with exhaling through your right nostril. And repeating it several times. It depends on where you are in your practice and what kind of an effect.
How many times might a beginner?
Well, actually, also you add to the ratio, so that a beginner would start with inhaling for Om 1, holding their breath Om 2, Om 3, Om 4, Om 5, exhaling Om 6, Om 7, and then adding to it until you finally had something like 8, 32, 16. So you were inhaling for 8 counts, holding your breath for 32, and exhaling for 16. The reason why they double the amount of time on the exhale is to get you to empty your lungs more fully so you take in more oxygen. And so they're really trying to balance both energy channels, the right side representing the sun and so forth and so on, and the left side, and the male energies with female energies and the moon and all of that. And a beginner could possibly do 4 repetitions. And also to breathe normally when they finish. What?
And the oxygen then gets sort of infused in your bloodstream. It must have certain physiological effects as well.
Yeah, definitely. See, what enables us to breathe actually is the carbon dioxide tension balance of our circulatory system. So in the breath holding part, you are really increasing carbon dioxide, which then enhances the breathing following that, is sort of promoting breathing.
Yeah. Doesn't the oxygen also affect the lactic acid buildups in the muscles, which create stress and tension?
That's one of the reasons why during the postures it's important to do the breathing practices that go, breathing patterns that go with them, so that you can balance out the biochemical byproducts of muscle function with oxygen, so there isn't as much lactic acid.
So as yoga practice becomes deeper, then the integration occurs of the breathing and the movement into and out of the postures.
Now the breath practice that I just did would be something that you would do following doing postures and the breathing patterns that go with them. And then the practices go from gross behaviors to more and more subtle practices. So we start with rules for behavior, and then the physical practice postures, and then breathing patterns, and then a progressive relaxation, and then the meditative practices. So the breathing all by itself would be done following and on the way to meditation.
Well, let's talk about meditation.
Okay.
Now, you've already referred to the Om count, and I know Om is one of the classic Sanskrit syllables that is used in meditation. I believe that you use. Can you talk about that?
Well, the Om syllable, spelled, well, sometimes A-U-M, but we often see it as O-M, is really sort of representing the universal energy. And so when we say it physically, we are sort of creating vibrations that are reminiscent of it. It sort of symbolizes it, sets up resonances within us that create certain moods. But it is the universal mantra, perhaps another word for God, and it's the mantra of the third eye, and is particularly powerful. Now, some yogis would say it's not a good idea to use it too often, and other yogis would say use it all the time. It's a very expanding type experience.
What is the third eye? I know it's important in meditation.
Well, the third eye is located in the center of the brow, and it is one of the chakras, one of the energy vortices of the body. And it is the eye, some animals do have a third eye. Of course, it isn't located here, it's more at the top of the head, a light-sensitive area. Some of our salamander-type animals. But for us, we do receive light by way of our eyes that is taken to the pineal gland, and it is responding to light changes. And
well, Descartes described the pineal gland sort of as the seat of the soul, the place where the mind and body come together.
Yes.
And I know there's quite a bit of research that talks about the pineal and the pituitary glands that are located right about in here as being the master regulatory glands of the endocrine system that control our whole emotional state. So perhaps there's some correlation there.
yeah. So the Indians who are involved with yoga feel that this location in the area of the third eye is an area that, as it metaphorically or actually opens, increases wisdom and increases intuition, the learning from within, the kind of direct knowing. And so it is something that comes more and more open through meditation and yoga practice, and for some people spontaneously. And you might think of it more metaphorically, but it is a kind of dawning of a way of relating to existence.
Well, what are some of the experiences that you yourself have had as you practice these meditation exercises?
Well, feelings of great love, I would say, great like universal love, feelings of sort of transcending individual concerns, a feeling of being connected with the all, a feeling of being very non-verbally educated, in the sense of sort of drinking in guidance for my life, and I like to follow my inner guidance as much as possible as I live my life. So,
sometimes people refer to vibrations or kundalini kinds of symptoms and energies and things like that. Have you experienced those things, or your students?
A little bit. In my approach to yoga, or our approach to yoga, we're not as goal-directed in terms of getting the kundalini energies going, but there is a feeling that you allow it to unfold, and through meditation and practices, it is more available.
We better define that term for our viewers. That we use kundalini.
Okay. Kundalini being an Indian concept for coiled potential energy located at the base of the spine, which, when awakened, seems to make its way up the area of the spinal column, awakening the different levels of relating to the world called the chakras.
Yes.
And so anyway, when the Kundalini is awakened, there are a number of experiences that go with that, part of which is a sense of vibration within the body. And then one of the things I've experienced in meditation is a feeling that as you meditate, the different chakra levels become more present, so you can, to whatever thought content you have coming through or images, they will kind of take the form of the different chakras, or the nature, essence of the different chakras.
Classically, some writers on yoga, such as Ramurti Mishra, have associated each of the chakras with a different glandular system in the body, haven't they? The sexual center, the solar plexus, the heart, and thymus gland, and so on.
The thyroid. and so forth and so on. There was another, I want to say something also about experiences in meditation. in meditation, people will also experience some of the senses operating without the usual physical input.
Yes.
So what is often experienced in meditation is inner lights. So you were asking me about experiences that I have had.
Yes.
And so one of those is the inner lights, which take different colors when you are in different states of consciousness. And sometimes there are the dawning of other images in that. Also, the nod sound, which is a very soft vibration that you can hear. You can hear it when you close your ears. You can hear inside. The higher sound is the nod sound. The lower sounds are your own circulation. So you can listen in. You also learn to hear that without closing your ears. So you hear it in meditation. It's kind of also a kind of guidance in meditation.
You've written about seeing a blue light yourself in meditation.
Right. The blue light has been written about often by different authors and teachers, and it's lovely to watch. There's also sometimes white, and also sometimes there will be a golden light. I think a little bit about what was written in The Secret of the Golden Flower is reminiscent of the golden light that is sometimes present. Also, one time when I was meditating, it's only happened once, I was experiencing sort of an inner vision and gradually waiting to see what was going to unfold, and at a certain point there was an eye looking back at me.
Interesting.
Which is a sort of a design of an eye, which is also something that's been in the mystical tradition a lot over time.
Eleanor, we have just about a minute left, but I think we shouldn't close the program without discussing samadhi, or the ultimate goal of yoga.
Right. So at the point through your meditation, well, I think of meditation starting with concentration, and then you enter a kind of nonverbal dialogue. And when you cease to have a sense of separate self, when you achieve union with the object of your meditation, the focus of your meditation, then you have entered into samadhi, which may be a short-term experience or a longer-term experience, but definitely one that transforms your life.
A very powerful state of consciousness.
The experience of union. Yeah.
And I guess that the short term is a common one, but the long term, profound, permanent state of samadhi is something very rare that great saints and mystics and sages would experience.
Right. And that we may all experience sometime in the latter stages of our lives.
Eleanor Criswell, thank you so much for being with me and sharing these principles of somatic yoga.
Thank you.
Living them.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for being with us.
Book 2 in the New Thinking Aloud Dialogues book series is a tribute to parapsychologist Russell Targ, celebrating his 90th birthday. New Thinking Aloud is a non-profit endeavor. Your contributions to the New Thinking Aloud Foundation make a meaningful difference in our ability to produce new videos.